to the drivers, and once more the conditions are looking very, very variable. So a very warm welcome from myself, Ben Evans, to the 6th of the 8 stops on the 2013 International GT Open calendar. From Spa, we head to Monza and then the circuit to Catalunya for the season finale. Well, it has been raining pretty much incessantly since the checker flag came down on yesterday afternoon's race, but in the last hour or so, it has just begun to dry out. The temperature's in the mid-teens. The clouds are not looking anywhere near as ominous as they did, but there is going to be a real debate for the teams on the grid about whether or not to go for slick or wet tyres for the start of today's race. 50 minutes of action await us, and well, we'll be hard-pressed to match the drama of the first race of the weekend, which saw a fantastic victory for Lorenzo Bontempelli and Marco Fretzer at the wheel of the Kessel Racing Ferrari. So the cars just currently on their sighting lap, now having come out of the pits. They'll then head to the grid where the teams are ready and waiting for them. And I think we're going to see quite a lot of debate about what to do in terms of car setup and what to do in terms of tyres, because as you can see, there is something like a dry line beginning to emerge. There's Miguel Ramos, the co-driver of the car that sits on pole position, that of Nicky Pastorelli in the V8 Racing Corvette. Pastorelli and Ramos, who were third in yesterday's race, and they won the Super GT class. As well as part of that, the runner-up yesterday was the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche of Isaac Tutumlu and Dimitris Tverikos. The championship leader, though, Andrea Montermini, had his worst day of the season. The car pitted and had a driver change during a safety car period. That is in contravention of the regulations. It meant that although Davide Rigon and Montermini finished third on the road in the Vallorba course Ferrari, they actually had a lap added to their race time, which saw them finishing all the way down in 14th position outside of the points. And for the first time this season, after 11 races, Andrea Montermini did not finish on the overall race rostrum. Well, they start today from second on the grid. It is his new co-driver this weekend, Davide Rigon, who will be starting the race. His regular co-driver, Luca Filippi, is on Formula 1 duty this weekend, so that is going to be worth watching. Rigon, who has established himself as a very, very quick GT racer. There is Montermini on the grid, in good spirits as ever, the Italian driver. The car's just coming to the end of their sighting lap. And for those that take the gamble of the start on slick tyres, I think there is going to be plenty to find 2 or 3 laps into the race, because these big GT cars clear surface water very quickly. We've had a preceding support race that finished about 20 minutes ago involving the big Radical sports cars as well, so there are the vestiges of a dry line emerging, but the first couple of laps are going to be a little bit tricky as the cars head to the grid. This is the second race of the weekend. It's the slightly shorter 50-minute race. We had a 70-minute race yesterday. As ever in the International GT Open, there is a mandatory pit stop that must be made between 40 and 60% of the race duration. That means from 20 to 30 minutes of today's race, the cars must come in for a mandatory minimum of 70 seconds, although those with the success handicap will have to be in the pits a little bit longer. There are 2 classes in the International GT Open. There is the Super GT class, which is for, broadly speaking, GT2 specification cars, and the GTS class, which is for, broadly speaking, GT3 specification cars. And there is yesterday's race winner, Lorenzo Bontempelli, the Kessel Racing Ferrari, actually a GTS specification car. The wet weather generally favours the GTS cars because, unlike the Super GTs, they've got the benefit of ABS braking. They've also maybe got a little bit of a kinder power delivery. And Bontempelli, in the end, was able to claim victory by almost 40 seconds. 35 seconds was his advantage on the line. He's going to have an awful lot of work to do, though, today to repeat the result, because the Kessel Racing Ferrari starts down in 17th. This, then, the pole position car, the V8 Racing Corvette, in the hands of Nicky Pastorelli. Here, Miguel Ramos, currently third in the championship standings, looking to try and close in on this car, the Vallorba course Ferrari. Davide Rigon and Andrea Montermini. Rigon, the 2-time Super League Formula champion, starts the race. He's had a good weekend in terms of pace, Davide Rigon. Third on the grid, Maxime Soulet, the GPR Racing Aston Martin, victorious at the first race of the season back at Paul Ricard. We haven't seen them since the Paul Ricard round, but Maxime Soulet and Enzo Ide finishing 5th in yesterday's race, should never be discounted. 4th on the grid in the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari, Kirill Ladygin. And that car was looking rather sorry for itself yesterday afternoon, but Ladygin and Vyacheslav Maliv have gone well this season, as have really the SMP Russian Bears team, because lining up 5th on the grid is the sister car, Roman Mavlanov. And Mavlanov, making the switch from single-seaters for the 2013 season, has adapted very, very nicely to GT cars. Diederik Schitov's V8 Racing Corvette, the car that he and Bert Longin share, lines up 6th on the grid, and Schittov currently 5th in the championship standings, would like a good result. The Safe Path Racing Mercedes, Renke van der Zande and Miguel Toro also looking for a good result today. They lead the GTS championship standings by just 1 point from Lorenzo Bontempelli, and then the Biotech McLaren of Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano. They have everything to race for. Jan Seyfarth also well up the grid in the 2nd of the Seyfarth Mercedes cars this weekend, the car that he's sharing with Max Volker. Certainly a car to watch today is going to be the AF Course Ferrari of Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron. Already several victories to their credit this season, looking for their 4th win of the season. They've always done it in the 2nd race of the weekend, as happened at Portimao, the Nürburgring and Silverstone. Alexander Telkanitsa Senior well up the grid in the 80 Racing Ferrari 458. Alexander Telkanitsa Jr. and the AF Course team who run the car, they led the regulations best of all yesterday, giving them an excellent 6th place finish, also getting them onto the Super GT rostrum. Matteo Beretta and Michael Lyons were to be found in feisty form yesterday. In particular, Lyons really adapting very, very nicely to the Spa circuit. We saw a storming drive through the field from Joel Camathius in the Ombra Racing Ferrari, up to 8th position. Camathius, the former champion, also former champ car racer, should never be discounted. Biotech Racing, McLaren of Rafael Suzuki, frustrating race yesterday. They also made the driver change during the safety car period, so again got the lap penalty. The team, following a suspension failure to Chris van der Drift, decided to retire that car, but just 1 point for Suzuki and Pantano, more than that scored by Miguel Toro, will give them the lead of the GTS Championship. Ronnie Kessel imparting a few words of wisdom to Lorenzo Bontempelli as he contemplates how far up the grid he can come. He's got a fair bit of work to do, but Bontempelli and Marco Frezza, a very quick combination. Let's have a look then how they line up in entirety with the front row of the grid. Nicky Pastorelli of the V8 Racing Corvette and Davide Rigon, Valorba Course Ferrari. Row 2, Maxime Soulet, the very rapid, locally prepared GPR Racing Aston Martin and Kirill Ladygin. Row 3, Roman Mavlanov and Diederik Schittov. The 4th row of the grid, Renke van der Zande and the very, very experienced Dutchman Peter Cox in the Lamborghini. That is a car that could well be in contention for the rostrum. Row 5, Matt Griffin, of course, Ferrari, and Jan Seyfarth, the 2nd, the Seyfarth Mercedes. Row 6, Matteo Beretta and Alexander Telkanitsa Senior. Row 7 of the grid, Rafael Suzuki and Joel Camathius. On to row 8, and Johnny Larson and Lorenzo Bontempelli making it all Kessel Racing, Ferrari 458. Row 9, Dimitris Tverikos, yesterday's runner-up, and Wolf Nathan, unfortunately reversed the Corvette into retirement. Row 10, Danny Vertman and Vadim Kogai. The 11th row, we've got the American driver Stephen Earle and Giuseppe Getzi in the 2nd of the Auto Orlando Sport Porsches. Then row 12, Louis Silva and Wow Silva in the Sports and EU Mercedes. The back of the grid is Dirk Parkhofer in the Porsche 997. Unfortunately, that means that not appearing today is the 2nd of the Biotech McLarens, car shared by Louis Razzia and Chris van der Drift. It was a very nasty accident for van der Drift at Eau Rouge that brought out the safety car yesterday. He is okay. It was a suspension failure on the car that pitched the car off headfirst into the tyre barriers, picked up a huge amount of damage, and although the team worked all night to get the car prepared, unfortunately it was to no avail, so that car is not making it to the grid today. We also don't appear to have on the grid the 2nd of the Team Rhino's Lippert Motorsport Lamborghinis after an accident in qualifying yesterday morning for Stefano Rosina and Alan Clary and Daniel Zampieri in the Kessel Ferrari. It was a testing crash on Friday that put paid to their bid this weekend. Even so, it is a fantastic grid of supercars. They're just about to set off on their formation lap, and then we will have the 12th race of the 2013 International GT Open season about to get underway, and the race that I suspect is going to be run in rapidly changeable conditions as the green flag is waved. The cars set off on their formation lap, of course, as is always the case in the International GT Open. It is a rolling start, and this, for the drivers, the last chance to really get a sense of the grip. You can see there's half a dry line into La Source, but then that sheen of water to the inside line going to make it very, very tricky at the opening hairpin. They'll all be very well advised to try and keep out of trouble as best they can. Wonderful circuit, Spa, and one that the drivers thoroughly enjoy, because out of La Source they then plunge downhill very, very steeply past the old pits complex. There's Miguel Ramos Longin, Diedrich Schüttoff's father, watch on nervously before they arrive into the legendary Eau Rouge corner. They have the compression at the bottom of the hill before they plant their right foot, accelerate up over the crest, out of Radion and on to the Kemmel Straight, which offers up really one of the best overtaking opportunities here at Spa. Over a kilometre long, able to use the benefit of the slipstream as they then sprint along to the sequence at Les Combes. It caught one or two of them out in yesterday's race. Let's hope that it isn't the same today, particularly on what could well be a fairly frantic first lap. Then head through Les Combes and on towards the Bruxelles hairpin. Again, a tricky corner, the Bruxelles hairpin, right-hand hairpin, but a very steep downhill approach, which is where the front runners are turning through now, before they then get propelled into a sequence of 3 left-hand turns, one after the other, and really the opportunity to warm up maybe the tyres that haven't been used thus far on this formation lap. Again, a dry line just beginning to appear. It's Matteo Beretta in the AF Course Ferrari. Here, Michael Lyons put together a feisty drive yesterday. They felt that they had a chance of getting onto pole position for both of these races in terms of their outright performance, but they've had laps either interrupted by red flags or just catching traffic at the wrong time. But the AF Course Ferrari appears to be very, very nicely hooked up. I think the other AF Course Ferrari, that of Matt Griffin, is certainly one to watch for in the early stages, because Matt, unusually for him, is some way down the grid. 10th on the grid was where he qualified, but that was with a puncture on his fastest lap. And so Griffin saying yesterday that he feels the pace of that car is probably sufficient to challenge Nicky Pastorelli and Davide Rigon at the front of the field, and that's what he needs to do in the early stages. There it is, the predominantly red car with the white bonnet and white roof of Matt Griffin, the Irish driver who has really established himself as one of the top GT racers globally, like many of these drivers. He was in Brazil last weekend for a World Endurance Championship commitment. He's also been found in the British GT Championship for much of this season. He's got a lot of very, very quick GTS class cars that he needs to find his way past in the early stage of the race. The race about to get underway very, very soon, because the field beginning to form up in side-by-side formation behind the pace car as they turn through Blanchimont. Yesterday was a breathtaking sight as the lights flash green as they all charge towards La Source. It's going to be very much the same again today, as the championship beginning to come to its head. Just 2 rounds to go, 4 races after the end of today. And after the disappointment for Andrea Montermini yesterday in terms of the penalty that he and Davide Rigon picked up, it enabled Pastorelli and Ramos to close within 40 points of Andrea Montermini. He cannot afford another bad race today. And that means that Davide Rigon, he's got to try and find a way past Nicky Pastorelli, but he's also got to make sure that nothing goes wrong for the Valour Course Ferrari. So it is the V8 Racing Corvette of Nicky Pastorelli, the white Valour Course Ferrari of Davide Rigon that make up the front row of the grid as we're about to go racing for the second time this weekend here at Spa. The red lights about to flash green into the pit lane. Peeled Matteo Beretta, possibly the wrong call with tyres, as the rest of the field charge away. And it's a super start from Maxime Soulet in the GPR Racing Aston Martin, who is looking to challenge the inside line into La Source for the first time. Also well away is Kirill Ladygin in Rochenberg's Ferrari, in contact, and around goes Maxime Soulet. Disaster for the Aston Martin. So it is Ladygin who takes the lead away from Nicky Pastorelli as they plunge down to Eau Rouge for the first time. Then it's Roman Mavlanov who is into third position. Fourth place, Davide Rigon, but struggling possibly with slick tyres. They're a little bit cold. He gets past by Alexander Talkanitsa Senior. Also coming through the field very strongly is the black, red and white Kessel Racing Ferrari. That is the car of Johnny Larsson. But the Russian Bears Ferraris flying in these early stages. Kirill Ladygin and Roman Mavlanov running first and second. It's Pastorelli then, the pole sitter, down into third. Up to fourth, we've got Alexander Talkanitsa Senior. Fifth is Johnny Larsson. Sixth is Renger van der Zande in the Seyfarth Mercedes. Then we've got the Team Rhino's Leipert Lamborghini of Peter Cox, Dimitris Dverikos in the Autolando Porsche, then Raphael Suzuki in the Bitec McLaren. It means that Davide Rigon has slipped all the way down to 9th position and is already a cork in the bottle. He's about to lose another place and dropped to 10th as Jan Seyfarth picks his way past him. Joel Camathius and Lorenzo Bontempelli looking to do the same as well. So Davide Rigon having a very tricky first lap of the race here. He's able to keep a couple of them behind him. And again, I suspect that this is probably a result of differing tyre strategies. I suspect that unless there's something mechanically wrong with that Vlorba course Ferrari, Rigon's gone with slick tyres and is just taking a little bit of time to get some heat into them. But as you can see, the sun beginning to come out. The Vlorba course team watch on nervously, not how they wanted the first lap of the race to go. So this essentially is the battle for 10th position with Joel Camathius crawling all over his tail. Then we've got Vadim Kogai, who didn't get to race yesterday in the Rinaldi Porsche after it stuttered to a halt with mechanical issues. And then also Matt Griffin, and then the recovering Maxime Soulé, who has done very well to get the power back down after that initial spin. So through to complete the first lap of the race very, very shortly into the final chicane. It has been a very lively opening exchange. There's Renger van der Zande in the Seyfarth Mercedes, the Jerez winner. He's got Peter Cox all over his tail. So the first lap complete, and it's being led by Kirill Ladygin. Second place is about to be Nicky Pastorelli, who powers past Roman Mavlanov, reclaims the place on the brakes into La Source, runs out a little bit wide, and Mavlanov able to jink back through in the Ferrari. The pair of them then have a sprint down towards Eau Rouge, and you suspect that's going to favour the Super GT Corvette of Pastorelli. He moves back through into second position, arrives into Eau Rouge, finds that dry groove, consolidates second place. Let's have another look at the start. And yes, it was contact. Roman Mavlanov tagging Maxime Soulé. A couple of cars in the midfield spinning in sympathy. And the way that the race leader Ladygin dove to the inside along the Kelman straight suggests he's on wet tyres. Roman Mavlanov looks to repass Nicky Pastorelli. Pastorelli, though, holds on to second position. Now, what about Davide Rigon? He is still a long way back as Raphael Suzuki takes his turn to try and challenge Jan Seyfarth. And these initial conditions really favouring the GTS cars. They've got the benefit of the ABS brakes. It just means they're that little bit more stable under braking, particularly into some of these downhill sequences. So this is the fight for fourth position, headed by the black car of Alexander Talkanitsa Senior. He has then got Johnny Larsson's multicoloured Ferrari in pursuit. And then we have got Renger van der Zande, who picks his way past Peter Cox. So the pair of them trying to get onto terms with the two Ferraris immediately ahead, as we've now got the battle coming together for the lead, and Kirill Ladygin under pressure from Nicky Pastorelli, Peter Cox and Renger van der Zande, the two Dutchmen going wheel to wheel. Cox in the Lamborghini able to find his way back past van der Zande as Pastorelli looks to challenge for the lead into Fania, and through he goes past Kirill Ladygin. So the pole sitter Nicky Pastorelli has the lead, but for how long? Ladygin looks to fight back as the pair of them accelerate out of campus through towards the Corporal Frere, and then the sprint towards Blanchimont. And this is where Pastorelli can open up the throttle on the Corvette and try and pull clear of the Russian Bears Ferrari. Even so, it's been a spirited start to the race from Kirill Ladygin. There's a little bit of a twitch through Blanchimont, and then in third place, gamely holding on, it's Ladygin's teammate Roman Mavlanov, but he is about to be swamped, most likely by Peter Cox, who's got the Lamborghini working beautifully. He tries to outbrake Alexander Talkanitsa Senior into the chicane. He succeeds in doing just that. Moves up into fourth position. That is the white and gold Lamborghini. It's about to become third as assertive defence there from former Formula Renault 2-litre racer Roman Mavlanov, who has to concede, though, into La Source. Cox dives through, takes the position, climbs up into third place, and we thought that car was a good bet for the podium. At the moment, it's proving to be exactly that. So the fight for third about to arrive into Eau Rouge, with the Team Rhino's Lipa Lamborghini leading the way from Roman Vlanov in the second of the SMP Russian Bears Ferraris, and then into fifth place we've got Alexander Taukanitsa Senior, then Johnny Larson in the Kesson Ferrari, and he has got the two Safe Path Mercedes flying in formation just behind. Roman Vlanov looks to try and make the move on Peter Cox into Lake On, very, very tight. And Mavlanov really backing himself in these conditions, an awful lot of confidence on the brakes, couldn't quite squeeze through. Dramas at the hairpin, and it's Lorenzo Bontempelli who gets tipped into a spin by Diederik Schutthoff. Didn't really see the start of that, as Jan Seyfarth is now finding his Mercedes very much to his liking, clambers up past Johnny Larson. The position's changing almost with every turn, but it's still Pastorelli who leads. Second place is Kirill Ladygin. Third place is Roman Mavlanov, who's found a way back past Peter Cox. For third and fourth, this is the battle for fifth. Or no, rather, in fact, Peter Cox had got onto turns with Kirill Ladygin, so this is the battle for second position, and flashing his headlights and diving through. So the Lamborghini of Peter Cox goes into second place and takes the lead of the GTS class as a result. Out of Fan he comes, right out on the very far side of the circuit. And Jan Seyfarth is racing his way up through the field. Alexander Taukanitsa Senior going very strongly, but he has now got the rapidly recovering white and yellow Aston Martin and Maxime Soulet behind him. Soulet, though, was rather unceremoniously having the door slammed in there by Taukanitsa Senior, but he gets the power down a little bit more comfortably. The Aston Martin looks to draw alongside into Blanchimont, and through he goes. So that's the place gained for Soulet, up into fifth. Fantastic performance this, because he's only 2.5 laps on from that spin at the source for the first time. They're all fanning out behind, trying to find their way past Roman Mavlanov, whom I suspect started the race on wet tyres and is now finding that it's not unlike trying to go roller skating on ball bearings, because what happens when you run with wet tyres in the dry weather is that all the grooves that cut into them overheat. It means that sections of the tyre begin to move around on the wheel, and it's not an altogether pleasant driving experience, as Joel Camathius rather squeezed out there. Mavlanov moving across to try and claim the line. Amazingly, Mavlanov's held his position, and look at Davide Rigon there in the Valour Course Ferrari. He has got his tyres up to temperature and is now looking to join in the battle. And those that possibly started on wets are going to find it's a very, very long 10 minutes until the driver change window opens and they can start thinking about making a pit stop without really costing them a huge amount of time. So Jan Seyfarth and Maxime Soulet both found their way past Kirill Ladygin as well. So that's the fight for third, fourth and fifth. This battle for sixth, still headed by Alexander Taukanitsa Senior. And then it's Roman Mavlanov, followed by Matt Griffin. So Griffin's AF Course Ferrari coming good for him as well. He powers past Roman Mavlanov. Joel Camathius follows through somewhat assertively, and Davide Rigon looking to do exactly the same thing into the Bruxelles hairpin. Realises there's not much grip to the inside, but then Mavlanov just slithers out a little bit wide. Davide Rigon dives through. Johnny Larson trying to do much the same thing as well. As the pair of them head on towards the double gauche sequence, they've got Gavan de Zander in pursuit, as Matt Griffin able to elevate himself past Alexander Taukanitsa Senior. So that is good enough for sixth position then for Griffin, as he chases down Kirill Ladygin. And Taukanitsa Senior also losing out, as Jan Seyfarth and Maxime Soulet do battle. This is the fight for third position, the battle for second in the GTS class. So we have a look at the replay of Peter Cox moving up through the field, just brushing Alexander Taukanitsa Senior into braking. That was possibly more Peter Cox just moving his line. And then the replay of Cox taking second position, as it was then from Ladygin. Peter Cox, though, a long way back from Nicky Pastorelli, who is just romping clear now at the head of the field and has comfortably set the fastest lap of the race. So Cox goes through. He's 15 seconds back from Pastorelli and 4 seconds slower on that last lap. Then this fight for third position, already 20 seconds back from the race leader, having a very enjoyable and close tussle. The source they head, and then down towards Eau Rouge, and Jan Seyfarth, his work cut out here to try and keep Maxime Soulé at bay. Soulé, former Belcar champion, he knows the Spa circuit very, very well. There's more dramas further through the field. It's Lorenzo Bontempelli, after his spin of a few moments ago, moving up past Roman Mavlanov. As you can see, using the slipstream there is Soulé. He pulls out the last possible moment to challenge for third position, but he can't quite do it. And the Mercedes of Jan Seyfarth are able to hold on, but you can see the challenge for these drivers, assuming that they're on slick tyres, is that whilst they've now got a very dry racing line, what they've got is still a very slippery circuit off the racing line. That means their braking heroics are going to be very tricky to do at least the next few laps, as Lorenzo Bontempelli, in inspired mood, moving up through the field, drawing alongside Alexander Taukenitz Sr. This battle now for 9th and 10th position. And Bontempelli, yesterday's race winner, he's got, or he thought he'd got the run to the Bruxelles hairpin, but he forces Taukenitz Sr. out wide. He misses his braking point. Bontempelli dives through. Johnny Larson attempts to do much the same. He can't quite do it. This is good driving here from Alexander Taukenitz Sr. He's coming under all kinds of pressure, but Larson should be clear by the time they arrive into Double-Gauche. He is, brings himself back on to the dry line. Meanwhile, the fight for third is still very much as it was. Jan Seyfarth from Maxime Soulé. Seyfarth in the Mercedes, Soulé the Aston Martin. This is what the International GT Open is all about. Multi-mark GT racing at its very, very best. We've got a Chevrolet Corvette that leads the race in the hands of Nicky Pastorelli. Second place, a Lamborghini with Peter Cox, the pilot, and then the Mercedes versus the Aston Martin for third as they turn through Blanchimont, and Soulé gets a good run here on Seyfarth, runs out wide over the curb. He's forcing Jan Seyfarth to go very defensively on the brakes into the final chicane. Now, has Seyfarth outbraked himself? No, he hasn't. But Soulé asking all the right questions, trying to find a way through. The Belgian driver. Home race this for the GPR racing team. Strongly linked to the Aston Martin Brussels dealership, and lots of guests here this weekend from Aston Martin Brussels, and Maxime Soulé is giving them some great entertainment. Now, will he try something a little bit spectacular into Eau Rouge? He's got the headlights ablaze, somewhat unnecessarily. I'm pretty sure Jan Seyfarth knows exactly where Maxime Soulé is, as Soulé carries the speed through Eau Rouge beautifully up over the crest of Radion, and surely he's going to have the run down the Kemmel Straight now, as the pair of them also have got Peter Cox just beginning to come towards them as well. They were fractionally quicker than the Lamborghini last time through. Soulé again out of the slipstream bubble, nice and early. Can he draw alongside? No, he can't. And so Jan Seyfarth holds on to that third place. And with just 6 minutes to go until the pit window opens, they would very much like to make this move as quick as they possibly can and then see what they can do. This is Maxime Soulé about getting on terms with Peter Cox, because they battle with each other like this. Both Seyfarth and Soulé are slowing themselves down just a little bit. So last time around they were 0.2 of a second quicker than Peter Cox, and that was with plenty of defensive driving. You wonder just how much nearer to the Lamborghini they could be without driving that defensively. Also in the background you can see that Matt Griffin is just beginning to home in on their tail as well. So Soulé getting increasingly frustrated, and Jan Seyfarth, you can see there, he's just as near to the inside of the corner on the way to Fagnes as he dared to make sure he didn't cost himself too much speed through the Fagnes sequence. They then head through Campus Corner on the way to Corbera Paul Frere. In the meantime, about to reel off his 6th lap of the race is Nicky Pastorelli, and it's going to be almost certainly another fastest lap of the race. Pastorelli is absolutely flying. Across the line he comes now. He does indeed set another fastest lap of the race. He's currently circulating 1.2 seconds quicker than anybody else in the race, and although the difficulty from Nicky Pastorelli is that in terms of the pit stop handicap, he and Miguel Ramos have got an additional 45 seconds that they must serve as drama, and it's Johnny Larson in the Kessel Ferrari into the barrier on the exit of Les Combes. Frustrating weekend for Larsen and Jan Magnussen in that Kessel Ferrari. They have had plenty of pace, but instance early now in both of the races. On towards Eau Rouge, and again Maxime Soulet in the slipstream behind Jan Seyfarth. Where can he try and line up the move? He's not really quite close enough to Seyfarth on the entry to Eau Rouge. He brings some of that gap down though as they climb out of Radion, and this time the Aston Martin doesn't have to feather the throttle at all through Eau Rouge. So onto the Kemmel Straight, they've got Peter Cox, who is coming towards them to the tune of about 2 or 3 tenths of a second a lap, but Soulet this time around not even close enough to challenge Seyfarth on the brakes into Les Combes, so instead he's having to revert to plan B. Further back, Matteo Beretta, who pitted at the end of the formation lap to put slick tyres on, scything up through the field. That is for 12th place then, as he finds his way past Alexander Tauknik Sr. His next target is the orange and grey Porsche of Dirk Parhofer, as Stephen Earl and Roman Mavlanov going side by side into Eau Rouge. That's good news for Renger van der Zande. And Earl, who I suspect started on slick tyres, versus Mavlanov and van der Zande, who most likely didn't. Yes, you can see as they head down the Kemmel Straight, they're moving to the side of the circuit, trying to find just little puddles that will cool those tyres down ever so slightly, stop the tread moving around on them. So Beretta, who made the pit stop at the end of the formation lap, taking the opportunity to get onto terms with Dirk Parhofer immediately, and Parhofer looking to challenge the early race leader, Kirill Ladygin. Such is the way that fortunes can fluctuate. Ladygin is now down into 10th position, 66 seconds adrift of the lead. So again, Maxime Soulet in this fight for 3rd place, with Jan Seyfarth using the slipstream to full effect, arriving into Blanchimont, trying to force the error from Seyfarth. That is going to be easier said than done. Jan Seyfarth, very rapid driver. Maxime Soulet, though, knows the Spa circuit inside out, but even with all of those tricks at his disposal, he can't force his way through just yet past the Mercedes. Now, Peter Cox has just gone through, posting a 2 minutes 25.7. What does Seyfarth do? A 2 minutes 25.6. They are closing in just onto Peter Cox, but not really sufficiently. And we're only 2 minutes away from the pit window opening. More dramas. Kirill Ladygin pushing very, very hard in his efforts to keep Matteo Beretta and Dirk Parhofer behind. To Eau Rouge once more, and Maxime Soulet looking to try and line up the move on Seyfarth onto the Kemmel Straight. Meantime, though, the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli, with each successive lap at the moment, he is setting the fastest lap of the race. And now Soulet's got the run on Seyfarth. Is he going to go through? Yes, he does. And finally, it's a move that's been several laps in the making, but Maxime Soulet finds his way past Jan Seyfarth in the Mercedes. And now Soulet's going to get his head down and see what he can do about reeling in Peter Cox. The next sector is going to be absolutely crucial, as Maxime Soulet, for the first time unleashed, and closing in on both of them is Matt Griffin. There he is in the AF Course Ferrari. That was Griffin's, well, it's the fastest first sector of anybody in the race, just set by Griffin. Then in 6th place, it's this man, Joel Camathius, the Ombre Racing Ferrari, with Davide Rigon closing in 7th in the Vallorba Course Ferrari. Now, Rigon has got, when he comes into the pits to hand over to Andrea Montermi, a 15-second shorter pit stop, because they lost 15 seconds of penalty after finishing off the rostrum in yesterday's race. But at the moment, Davide Rigon is 38 seconds back, and so that's still going to leave a very, very big task for Andrea Montermi to overhaul on Miguel Ramos in the second half of the race. For now, Rigon focusing in on closing in to Joel Camathius, but this has been arguably Camathius' strongest weekend of the season. He really has driven superbly in both races, and he's got the Ombre Racing Ferrari in strong contention. So 8 laps complete from Nicky Pastorelli. We're 20 minutes into the second race of the 6th round of the 2013 International GT Open. And this is how it currently stands, with Nicky Pastorelli leading the way. 2nd place is Peter Cox in the Lamborghini. 3rd place, we've got Maxime Soulet in the GPR Racing Aston Martin. In 4th place, it's Jan Seyfarth in the eponymous Mercedes. And then in 5th place is number 21, which is Matt Griffin in the AF Course Ferrari. And there is Griffin, headlights ablaze, closing in onto the tail of Jan Seyfarth And Griffin, who has just posted the fastest lap of the race on that last lap, really begins to reel in as soon as the pit window opens. Davide Rigon is in the Valour course Ferrari to hand over to Andrea Montermini. Not surprising really that this is the first pit stop. Rigon, though, has done his job. He's given Montermini a task, but we're used to seeing Andrea Montermini working miracles. As now Matt Griffin looks to line up the move on Jan Seyfarth down the Kemmel Straight. Not quite close enough on that occasion, and it's quite hard to get a depth perception really as to how near Griffin was, because the camera angle foreshortens the Kemmel Straight somewhat, but Griffin certainly looking as if he's planning to try and find a way through on this lap. And I think we can expect to see probably both Jan Seyfarth in the silver Mercedes, Matt Griffin, the red and white Ferrari, staying out towards the very back end of this pit window, because they're a little bit faster than their respective co-pilots, and therefore to give them the very best opportunity. Meanwhile, this is all coming together very nicely. Second, third, fourth and fifth, all closing up on each other. Matt Griffin again has just posted the best first sector of anybody in the races into the pits. We have got now a number of runners. The Taukanitsas come in. Alexander Taukanitsa Senior hops out, as do the wet tyres, and it's going to be slicks for Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. as Maxime Soulé closing in on Peter Cox. This then the battle for second place in the race. It's also the battle for the lead of the GTS class, and after the very, very strong early laps from Peter Cox, this is now swinging in favour of Maxime Soulé. Also into the Autolando Sport Porsche gets Isaac Tutumlu. Dimitris Deveracos is out, unfortunately. Yesterday's runner-up down in 17th at the moment, so a fair amount of work to do for Tutumlu. So the pit stop sorts themselves out as Soulé contemplates the move on Peter Cox on the brakes into the final chicane. Can't quite pick his way past, as also in we have got the race leader Nicky Pastorelli to hand over to Miguel Ramos. Pastorelli is going to give Ramos a fair advantage to play with, so this now becomes the battle for the lead of the race between Cox and Soulé, and they're about to come on to terms with Miguel Toro as well as he emerges from the pit. So it's going to be a slightly jumbled order for the next few moments as Maxime Soulé thinks about the move into Eau Rouge, shows himself to the inside of Peter Cox. They're going to catch the touring almost Miguel Toro as they come out of Radion. Toro gets out of the way a little bit belatedly. Certainly Peter Cox flashing his headlights in frustration. This is going to give Soulé the opportunity to try and pounce as he now comes out of the slipstream, looks to draw alongside and does so and takes the lead of the race. So it's Maxime Soulé in the GPR Aston Martin who leads the way here at Spa. So we're about to hit the midway point. The pit stops are in full flow, but that was a beautiful move from Soulé. So he has the advantage. It's Peter Cox who slips to second, and up to third place now has come Matt Griffin in the AF Course Ferrari. Really can't remember a race where we've seen so many position changes in the opening 24 minutes of the race. Almost every lap we're seeing a pass for a podium place, as now that Griffin is through, he needs to put that lap on Miguel Toro fairly rapidly. Wave blue flags, but Griffin is on the slippery and slick part of the circuit, but he's able to carve his way past into the first of the double left-handers. You expect that Toro will get out of the way fairly smartly to enable his teammate Jan Seyfarth through. That's what he does as they arrive into Fagnes. At the same time, Miguel Toro doesn't want to get himself caught on a wet part of the circuit and risk spinning away, because he is, at the moment, the GTS Championship leader. There it is, Matt Griffin in pursuit now of Peter Cox, and last time around Griffin was 0.3 seconds faster than Cox. This lap already he has been the best part of a second quicker than the Dutchman. Griffin is probably going to be able to squeeze in one more lap before he has to come in and make his mandatory pit stop. We'll also find out at the end of this lap is the deficit that Andrea Montermini is going to make up to Miguel Ramos as Griffin makes the mistake into the final chicane. He's going to come through. I don't think he's really gained or lost anything as a result of that, but you can see the leading quartet all bunched up on each other as they complete the 10th lap of the race. And yes, maybe Matt Griffin did gain something from that, because he's just set the fastest third sector of anybody in the race thus far, so he will be anxious to try and avoid a drive-through penalty if he possibly can. through Eau Rouge. Second place man Peter Cox being pursued by the, of course, Ferrari Matt Griffin. Then we've got Jan Seyfarth in fourth. This is a strong performance from Seyfarth. It's these four amongst the front runners who are yet to make their pit stops. Andrea Montermini, after his pit stop, though, has just set the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far. In the meantime, into the pits comes Joel Comathius to hand over to Stefano Constantini. It's been a strong performance, as we were saying, from Comathius. It's battle for second and third about to come together. Also, change around for Kessel Racing. Marco Frezza making his return to the International GT Open this weekend. Takes over from Lorenzo Bontempelli. Frezza, who actually prior to this weekend already won an International GT Open race at Spa. That came back in the 2011 season. So the pit's getting very, very busy. Jackie Camp and Danny Wertmann swapping places. And Maxime Soulet, Peter Cox, Matt Griffin, you'd all expect to come in at the end of this lap, because there's 3.5 minutes remaining of the pit window. The lap times they're all currently posting are in the mid 2-minute 24s, so they may be able to squeeze out another lap if they're able to get over the start and finish line with something in the region of 22.5 minutes left in the race. So it might just be achievable for them. It's going to be touch and go. All the while, though, this has been a pretty solid lap from Matt Griffin. It's been a fantastic lap thus far for Maxime Soulet. So went across the line last time as well. Andrea Montermini was just under 8 seconds back from Miguel Ramos. So that is the other battle that we'll keep you appraised of between really the two championship contenders. So in to the chicane, and yes, they are all going to take the opportunity to be better safe than sorry into the pit. So the race leader, Maxime Soulet, comes down the pit lane. That is to hand over to Enzo Ide. Peter Cox will hand over to Fabian Hamprecht. Very, very quick young German driver making the transition to GT racing from single-seaters, and Matt Griffin to pass over to Duncan Cameron. So Soulet comes to a halt. Ide opens the door, poised and ready to get in. Ide, who was last year 14th in the FIA GT1 World Championship. There is Fabian Hamprecht, and strapped into the Lamborghini by Peter Cox. Likewise, Matt Griffin doing the same to his co-driver Duncan Cameron. Well, those drivers in the opening stint have really done everything that they can, as here is Andrea Montermini. And Montermini, as we've now come to expect, on a little bit of a charge. We'll find out shortly where he is relative to Miguel Ramos. The answer is he's very, very close to Miguel Ramos. So they're racing the cars that are currently static within the pit lane, and it's going to be, as they emerge, that we get a true sense as to the overall race order and really the task facing the likes of Montermini and Ramos in the latter stages of the race. So Andrea Montermini, through the middle sector alone on this lap, 1.5 seconds quicker than Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette that he's chasing down. Turning through Blanchimont now, and Montermini, frustrated with yesterday's penalty, looking to make amends for it. He's also only scored 2 victories this season. He's not won since the Nürburgring back in June, so he would very much like to get himself atop the rostrum here in Spa. But it's Fabian Hamprecht who has emerged in the Lippert Lamborghini, who, for my money, is leading the race. Yes, he is, because there is Enzo Ide, and with the pit stop handicap penalty that's been accumulating since the excellent races at Paul Ricard, then also finishing on the GTS podium yesterday, an awful lot to do. So Fabian Hamprecht it is, the young German driver, just 18 years old, moving on from racing in Danish Formula Ford, Austrian Formula 3. That's where he's been found previously, but adapting very, very neatly to the demands of international GT racing. He went superbly well at Silverstone. He now stands the possibility of scoring a race win. So it's Hamprecht who is in the way in second position. Then it's going to be Max Volker in the Seyfarth Mercedes. There he is in the silver and black car, and he's being chased down all the while by Enzo Ide. So this is the battle for second and third position. We'll then be able, at the end of this lap, to find out exactly where they are relative to the Super GT cars chasing them down And Volker, you suspect, is going to be fairly easy prey for Enzo Ide, and that is exactly the case. So up into second position goes Ide, who is something like 15, 20 seconds back from Fabian Hamprecht. We'll find out at the end of the lap as we see Andrea Montermini scything his way past Duncan Cameron. It's a place gained for Montermini. That puts him up to 5th overall. As Enzo Ide, the end of the second sector, 23 seconds back from the race leader Fabian Hamprecht. So we've got 19 minutes to go here at Spa in the 12th race of the 2013 International GT Open. This is your race leader in the Team Rhino Lippert Lamborghini, Fabian Hamprecht, and he is on his 13th lap of the race. In second place, it's the third car in this queue, which is the GPR Racing Aston Martin of Enzo Ide. Across the line now, flashes Ide, 22.1 seconds is his exam question to try and close in on Fabian Hamprecht. Before he goes any further, he's got to find a way past the two Sports and U Mercedes SLSs in the hands of Jose Pedro Fontes and Antonio Coimbra. And Ide will probably pass one of them along the Kemmel Straight. In third place, it is Miguel Ramos. There is Ramos. And in fourth, Andrea Montermini in the Vlorba Course Ferrari. Ramos and Montermini battling for the overall International GT Open Championship. Certainly the two cars ahead of them, because they've not been every round. Well, they'll be taking points off them, and not a significant factor in the championship, unlike the battle between Ramos and Montermini. Montermini, again, setting the fastest first sector of anybody in the race thus far, in pursuit of Miguel Ramos. The pair of them are 28 seconds back from the race leader, Fabian Hamprecht, but Montermini is about 4 seconds lap faster than Hamprecht at the moment. So all is not lost just yet. It depends really how quickly Montermini can find his way past the Corvette of Ramos. For Ramos, the Corvette very, very quick in a straight line, a little bit tricky through the corners, particularly on the damp patches, but Montermini doesn't want to risk everything and chance his arm too quickly. It's just that single racing line into Double Gauche. Instead, Montermini trying to pressurise the very experienced Portuguese driver Miguel Ramos into a little bit of an error. That doesn't happen through Double Gauche. What about into Fagnes? Again, Ramos just maybe taking a slightly more defensive line. Really has to slow the Corvette down all the way through Fagnes, trying to get the balance into that car, and that could present an opening for Montermini, who shows himself to the outside line into Campus. And on this lap, it's probably going to be into final chicane, which is Montermini's best opportunity. In order to do that, he needs to try and set up Ramos to be a little bit tentative through Blanchimont, enabling the Vlorba Course Ferrari to draw alongside. So here they come into Blanchimont now. Montermini showing himself in Ramos's mirrors as Ramos just gets on the brakes, settles the car for Blanchimont. They've got a recovering Mercedes, but fortunately remains out of the way. So is Montermini going to challenge on the brakes? Of course he is. He draws alongside and goes through, but does he? He then runs out wide, gets it back on track, and he was just a little bit too optimistic on the brakes. And this is the problem facing these drivers, is that we've got a dry racing line. It's very slippery offline, and so Andrea Montermini's got to do all of that work all over again. All the while, though, as this battle continues, both Ramos and Montermini are 3 seconds a lap quicker than Fabian Hamprecht. They are 2 seconds a lap quicker than Enzo Ide. So the leading quartet in this field are all beginning to close in on each other. And now Montermini carrying the pace out of Radion. So we have a look at the replay. Montermini drew alongside on the brakes, had to just let it off to get the car slowed down, but he now powers past Ramos along the Kemmel Straight, and this time he makes the move stick into Les Combes. So Montermini in the Vlorba Course Ferrari takes the lead of the Super GT class. He takes third place in the race overall. Things stay as they are. This will be his 11th podium in 12 races, and more importantly, it further extends his championship advantage over Miguel Ramos. Through the Bruxelles hairpin, Montermini now just get his head down and see what he can do about possibly challenging for the overall race win, because there is Enzo Ide just up the road ahead of him, and Montermini was 2 seconds through the first sector alone faster than Fabian Hamprecht, the race leader. Here we see the move, and Ramos certainly didn't make it easy for Andrea Montermini. but he gave him a car's width, and that was all that the Italian needed. The Lord course team, and Davide Rigon watch on nervously on the pit gantry as Montermini now sets off in pursuit of Enzo Ide. The gap was 5 seconds at the start of the lap. It is already down to 4 seconds midway through it, so Montermini pulling clear of Ramos, beginning to reel in Ide. Currently third in the GTS class, it is Stefano Constantini who runs in 5th. 6th place is yesterday's race winner Marco Frezza. In 7th place, we've got Duncan Cameron, the third of the Super GT cars, and it's Max Volker in 8th, Teo Beretta, or Michael Lyons rather, in 9th, and Alexander Stalkanitsa Jr. currently completes the top 10. Race leader Fabian Hamprecht goes through. His last lap was his best of the race, a 2 minutes 25.5, and it needed to be because Montermini offered up a 2 minutes 21.0, so he was 4.5 seconds faster last time round, Andrea Montermini. He's now within 23 seconds of the race leader, with just 13 minutes remaining. That is going to be a very, very big ask. Enzo Ide, in turn, was 1.5 seconds faster than Hamprecht, as he has got Montermini now within 4 seconds as Ide sprints along Kemmel Straight. There is Andrea Montermini, looking to find his way past the Mercedes. That's to put a lap on the Mercedes. That's of no particular concern. So through to the end of the first sector, and Montermini, again, the best part of 2 seconds faster than Fabian Hamprecht, and exactly a second faster than Enzo Ide. And you'd really expect that because the 2 leading cars, the GTS class cars, it's a Super GT car that Montermini is piloting, and in a straight line. That's really where the Super GTs have got the advantage. Chance to see just how hard Enzo Ide is pushing. He's looking pretty good, you would say, for second in the GTS class. He's also looking pretty good for an overall race podium, Enzo Ide, but whether or not he's going to be second or third remains to be seen, because he's got the battle between Tim Muller and Maurizio Fratti immediately ahead of him. The 2 Porsches battling at the moment for 19th place, but Ide makes light work of them on the brakes into Fagna. Montermini's then going to have to try and find a way past on the way towards campus if he possibly can. He's able to dive to the inside of Fratti. Not entirely convinced the Italian saw him there, because Montermini then gets pushed out wide over the curves, but eventually regroups. But it's those little wobbles that can be so costly when you're really up against it. These 50-minute races only leaves the drivers a handful of laps after the pit window to try and close the gaps down. Have another look at it, and again, Montermini demonstrating just how slippery it is still off the racing line. Nervous smile, fingers crossed from Davide Rigon, as Fabian Hamprecht has completed his 15th lap of the race. It's a 2 minutes 25.8. Enzo Ide, 2 minutes 24.5. And Andrea Montermini, 2 minutes 23. The result of those delays in traffic, it means that Montermini is 20.7 seconds back. He could yet win this race. It really depends on how quickly he's able to find a way past Enzo Ide and whether or not he gets slowed up by cars surrounding him. In the meantime, Tim Muller has got a very frustrated Mercedes behind him, and then an even more frustrated Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette. Tim Muller, though, he's doing exactly what the drivers were told to do in the drivers' briefing on Friday night, which is if you're about to be lapped, stay on the racing line, let the quicker car try and find their way around you, because at least that way you're being predictable. But as a result of that, Muller backing off, he's going to lose the place there to Fratti on the brakes into Les Combes. Muller, the German driver, first time we've seen him this year in the International GT Open. Always good to see a healthy complement of Porsches on the grid. That car, particularly in the Azadeur Parkhofer, was looking very strong in the early stages of the race. Ramos trying to pull clear of Sir Pedro Fontes, who is actively involved in this super scrap that's going on a little bit lower down the field. It's providing a little bit of a challenge for the drivers to try and pick their way through it all. So we've got 10 minutes to go. Ramos in 4th. He's under no threat for that 4th position. At the same time, he's not closing in on Montermini or Ide. So here is the battle for 2nd and 3rd position. Andrea Montermini riding the curbs in the Villorba course Ferrari, trying to reel in Enzo Ide in the GPR Racing Aston Martin. The pair of them trying very, very hard, using all the road a little bit more, as through the second sector, and Montermini sets the best second sector of anybody in the race. He was 2 seconds quicker than Fabian Hamprecht just through that second sector. He was also 0.3 faster than Enzo Ide as he arrives into the final chicane. This, the end of the 16th lap of the race. Already Hamprecht is through with not his greatest lap, you would have to say, 2 minutes 26. Then we've got into the chicane in 4th place, Miguel Ramos. Across the line have come Ide and Montermini. Smiles from the V8 Racing Corvette team. So the battle for second and third, very, very close, but crucially, Andrea Montermini was almost 6 seconds quicker than the race leader Fabian Hamprecht. And this is really the beauty of GT racing. We had a fantastic sequence of wheel-to-wheel battles in the first half of the race. We've now got a marvellous chase that's underway, as Andrea Montermini could well be through into second position by the time they arrive into Les Combes, and Enzo Ide knows it. He covers the inside line. The Villorba course Ferrari has drawn alongside. It's gone through, and Montermini goes into second position to a standing ovation from the team on the pit wall. And so now the exam question for Andrea Montermini is, can he overhaul 13 seconds of Fabian Hamprecht's advantage in the remaining 8 minutes of this race? Through the Bruxelles hairpin, he's already beginning to pull clear of Enzo Ide. Ide, though, has really been spurred along by the chase from Montermini. It means that last time through, Ide was 4 seconds quicker than Miguel Ramos. Is also making great progress is Marco Frezza on the tail of Stefano Constantini. This is the battle for the final spot on the GTS class podium, and at the moment it's Constantini in the Ombre Racing Ferrari, just clear of Marco Frezza. Frezza's been in very strong form this weekend. They've also got to be mindful of the fact that Michael Lyons, it's not, well, he's 10 seconds or so back from that group, but he's circulating at much the same pace. They can't afford to tangle themselves up too much as they arrive into Fagnes. Now this is going to be not the work of a moment for Marco Frezza to find his way through, because these cars, for all intents and purposes, are near enough identical. Ombre Racing and Kessel Racing will have gone different ways in terms of the setup. There's not going to be much mechanical advantage, because the beauty of multi-mark racing is that generally section of the circuit where the Ferrari's good, the car it's racing, be it an Aston Martin or a Porsche, might not be as good, but then there'll be other parts of the track where the Porsche or Aston Martin is far better than the Ferrari. When you've got two Ferraris, they know they're going to be very strong in exactly the same places. So although Marco Frezza has been a little bit quicker than Stefano Constantini on the last couple of laps, the extent to which he can close in remains to be seen. In the meantime, Fabian Hamprecht leads the way, headlights ablaze, and he wants the clock to tick from 6.5 to 0 minutes as quickly as humanly possible, with very good reason. Andrea Montermini has just absolutely obliterated the rest of the field in terms of the fastest lap of the race. He's got now to within 9 seconds of the race leader. This is the battle still for 5th and 3rd in the GTS class. And what Marco Frezza will try and do is get himself into the slipstream behind Stefano Constantini as they come out of Radion and on to the Kemmel Straight. And yet, Constantini was just a little bit more tentative maybe out of Radion. Frezza, his right foot absolutely planted to the loud pedal. You can barely see him. He's using the full advantage of the toe. He now ducks out, thinks about a little bit of heroics on the brakes, realises there's still enough time in the race to go. There's no chance of them catching Enzo Ide for second in the class, so therefore Marco Frezza can afford to take his time here and just try and pressurise Constantini into an error, just gradually latch himself onto the tail of Constantini. If things stay as they are as a result of this, it will give Lorenzo Bontempelli, the co-pilot of the 51 car, that's the bright red car, currently has Marco Frezza the lead of the GTS Championship, so that's also something else they've got to be mindful of, particularly on a day that's been pretty wretched for Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki in the Biotech McLaren. They're currently in 15th, and likewise Miguel Toril is in 13th, the championship leader, albeit just by 1 point. So this even if it stays exactly as it is, will be enough to give the championship lead to Lorenzo Bontempelli. But we're getting to this time of year where every point is crucial. There's now into the same camera shot. We've got Fabian Hamprecht and Andrea Montermini. And Hamprecht has been bottled up behind Vacislav Malev for most of this lap, and I think he would really like the Russian driver to move out the way as quickly as he possibly can. Malev, whose greatest success came racing Lagers in Russia, who's second in the Lager Granta Cup a couple of years ago, but is currently in 17th and has really slowed Hamprecht, who has now got Andrea Montermini within 4.5 seconds of the lead of the race. They are into their penultimate lap here at Spa. Now, can Montermini do it? Because, of course, the old adage is it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way through. Montermini didn't quite set the fast lap of the race last time round, as Hamprecht still flashing his headlights, and he's going to get very, very fed up with Malev. Finally, he scythes through in the Lamborghini. And what has that done for Hamprecht along the Kemmel Straight is actually benefited him on that occasion, because he was able to take full advantage of the slipstream. So it means that Montermini through the first sector was within 3.1 seconds of the German driver. As further back, Miguel Toril and Paul Rosell, getting all a little bit intimate with each other. They've got Giorgio Pantano looming in as well. So the leaders closing up on each other. Just 1.5 laps remaining here at Spa. Is it going to be the young German driver Fabian Hamprecht who takes the victory with Peter Cox in the Lamborghini? Is it going to be the Valour Course Ferrari of Davide Rigon and Andrea Montermini? They're about to come through and complete the second sector. Then we'll get a sense as to how much more ground Montermini has taken out of the Lamborghini. And there is Montermini looming ever larger. About to begin the long run back to the pits, and Montermini gets the advantage down to just 1.7 seconds, and this could change possibly even into the chicane at the end of this lap, or certainly down the Kemmel Straight for the final time, because we've now got less than a lap time remaining on the clock here at Spa. Is it going to be a maiden GT Open victory for Hamprecht? Is it going to be the third win of the season for Andrea Montermini in the Valour Course Ferrari? You would suspect it's going to be the latter. It just depends how wide a car Fabian Hamprecht can drive as they head into the final lap of the race. And the gap is down to just 3/4 of a second as they turn into the Source hairpin. And Montermini will know that he'll probably want to make the move along the Kemmel Straight. I doubt he'll try anything too risky into Eau Rouge. He just needs to make sure he doesn't get slowed, particularly by Hamprecht. Hamprecht gets the car nice and steady through Eau Rouge, but Montermini closing all the while. Now looks to unleash the full power of the Valour Course Ferrari and draws alongside as they enter the Kemmel Straight, and he's through. He takes the lead of the race. So Andrea Montermini leads at Spa with just 2/3 of a lap remaining in the 12th race of the season. And after the disappointment of yesterday, it's been a difficult weekend for the Valour Course team, but Montermini is now looking well set for victory. But every gear change will become a drama now. Every beat of the engine, be listening to make sure that nothing goes untoward. Let's have another look at it, and Hamprecht did everything he possibly could. He covered the inside line, but really the Valour Course Ferrari was always going to go through. It's been quite some chase from Montermini as he turns into the double gauche section for the final time of asking. Even so, Peter Cox and Fabian Hamprecht have driven an absolutely masterful race, and given Hamprecht's only very limited experience in GT cars, he's done some ADAC GT Masters races this year, alongside an appearance at Silverstone in the International GT Open. And to be in contention for the outright race win is really quite something. So Montermini just a few corners from home now. More importantly, in terms of the championship, with Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli destined to finish second in class and 4th overall, this is going to give Montermini a big boost in the championship, and the possibility that he could wrap things up in Monza next time out, although I'm sure that Ramos and Pastorelli will do everything in their power to make sure we go to the wire at the circuit to Catalunya. So out of Blanchimont for the final time, accelerating and then braking into the final chicane. The checkered flag is ready it's waiting, and it's going to be a third win of the season for Andrea Montermini in the Valour Course Ferrari. Davide Rigon scoring a victory in his first weekend in the championship alongside Montermini. Second place goes to Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox. They win the GTS class, and then completing the rostrum, Enzo Ide and Maxime Soule in the GPR Racing Aston Martin. Delight for the Valour Course team. Into fourth position, it's Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. They finished second in the Super GT class. And then what about for the final spot on the GTS podium? It is going to be Stefano Constantini who does it. He and Joel Comathius take fifth and third in the GTS class, but that sixth place, fourth in the class is sufficient to then give Lorenzo Bontempelli the lead in the GTS championship. And still the battles continue. This is the one for third in the Super GT class, and Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. has got a right rear puncture, and Duncan Cameron currently looking a little bit reluctant to pick his way past him. I wonder whether Cameron was involved in that as well. They were battling for the final spot on the Super GT podium, so Isaac Tutumlu powers through, but Cameron, who was leading going into that final lap, seemed to have an ailing car as well. For Andrea Montermini and Fabian Hamprecht, I think a very warm handshake on the podium. It was a fantastic battle, but the winners are Andrea Montermini and Davide Rigon, the Valour Course Ferrari team. Triumphant at Spa, their third win of the season, to build on their victories at Paul Ricard and at the Nürburgring. It's been a long, long time since the Nürburgring, because between them we've been to Jerez and Silverstone, and now with just the 2 rounds to come in Monza and Barcelona, Andrea Montermini, I wouldn't say he's got a hand on the 2013 championship yet, but he's certainly got a couple of fingers that are beginning to clutch on the handle. Across the line, by the way, in 10th place has come Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. ahead of Duncan Cameron. So Taukanitsa Jr. gets third in the Super GT class, and I just wonder the way that Cameron slowed up. We may see a replay that Cameron might feel that he was the guilty party there. In any event, Taukanitsa's complete the Super GT podium. Andrea Montermini working his way round to the rostrum. So let's have a look at the final classification. The win for Montermini and Rigon, and they set the fast lap as well. Second place, Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox. Third place, Maxime Soule and Enzo Ide. Fourth and second of the Super GTs was Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. Fifth place, Stefano Constantini and Joel Comathius. Sixth, Lorenzo Bontempelli and Marco Frezza. Seventh, Matteo Brescia and Michael Lyons. A great drive up to eighth from Isaac Tutumlu and Dimitris Diverikos. Likewise for Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano in ninth. The Taukanitsas complete the top 10 from Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. Season's best race from Freddie Kramer and Steve Nurl. An excellent performance to get them up into 12th position. The early start of the race, the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari, Vladislav Maniv and Kirill Ladagan in the end slips down into 17th position. Unfortunately, a couple of casualties along the way. So in terms of the Drivers' Championship, well, Andrea Montermini has a 47-point advantage over Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos. In turn, Pastorelli and Ramos moving clear of Cameron and Griffin, taking points out of the British drivers. It's been a good weekend, though, from the Taukanitsas. They are now poised to challenge Bert Longin and Diederik Schüthoff in the standings. So into Parc Ferme, huge applause from the Valour team. A delighted Andrea Montermini hops out of the Ferrari, and that has been an absolutely fantastic drive, because for most of his stint he was taking between 4 and 5 seconds a lap out of Fabian Hamprecht, and that is by no means straightforward to do. So celebrations for the Valour Course Ferrari team. I suspect also celebrations for the Team Rhino's Leipert Motorsport squad, because Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox have won their class and they've driven a perfectly judged race. It was a very fine stint from Peter Cox, and then Hamprecht really did everything he possibly could. He didn't give away too much ground at all to Enzo Ide, who was doing battle with him for the GTS class victory. And there is Ide. He and Maxime Soule complete the overall race rostrum. And in 4 starts in the International GT Open this year, the GPR Racing Aston Martin's been on the podium in 3 of them, and now they've been on every step. So the second and the first at Paul Ricard. They've now got a third here at Spa to celebrate as well. Thumbs up all around from Montermini. Ide toweling off. It's been hot work because it's a humid day here at Spa. Very, very moist and damp in the air, but also still warm enough, carrying some of the heat still from summer. So this is when all the training in the gym really comes to the fore for these drivers. And they will then have a few weeks to recover themselves because the International GT Open is next in action at Monza. Start of October, and then we go to Barcelona in November. So let's have a look then at the overall race highlights. And off the line they went with a mixture of wet and dry tyres. Maxime Soulet tipped into a spin at the first turn. Amazing, really, that car was able to recover itself to the rostrum. In the early stages, the SMP Russian Bears Ferraris that led the way, but eventually Nicky Pastorelli looked to pick his way through. Peter Cox did much the same as he got some heat into his slick tyres. Lorenzo Bontempelli, as ever, could be relied upon for a feisty performance, as those that elect to start with wets found the grip going away from them. Maxime Soulet did everything he could to drive up the order. A great scrap that he had with Peter Cox, eventually in favour of Soulet, and Davide Rigon, Andrea Montermini, likewise feisty stuff. So as the pit window opened, Davide Rigon was first in to hand over to Montermini, who came out and was absolutely flying. That pass on Miguel Ramos was sufficient to give him the lead in the Super GT class. It wasn't all plain sailing for Montermini, picking his way through the traffic. He had a couple of scary moments. In pursuit then of Enzo Ide down the Kemmel Straight, and that was sufficient to give Montermini second place, but he then had 10 minutes with which to try and reel in the best part of 15 seconds. Eventually, coming out of Radion for the final time, Montermini, who caught the race leader Fabian Hamprecht, found his way past him and into a lead that only lasted half a lap, but it was the most important half a lap because it was the one that took him through to the checkered flag and his third victory of the season. Out of the final chicane and taking the win was Andrea Montermini. Second place and victory in the GTS class for Fabian Hamprecht, with then the rostrum being completed by Enzo Ide and Maxime Soulet. So the drivers about to be announced onto the rostrum. Smiles all around. It's been a fantastic weekend of racing here at Spa in the International GT Open. Two very entertaining, dramatic, close, but most importantly clean races. We've seen fantastic wheel-to-wheel action, but very, very little by way of contact where we have had retirements. They have generally been through solo efforts. So first of all, third place out onto the rostrum, Maxime Soulet and Enzo Ide. Delight for them. Into second position, Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox. Super performance for the Lamborghini, building on the potential that they showed at Silverstone, and then scoring the victory, Davide Rigon and Andrea Montermini. Third win of the season and a leap on the rostrum for Montermini. Also delight for Davide Rigon and of course the Villorba course team. National anthem complete. Time to get underway with the presentations of the trophies. So first of all, the third place trophy for Enzo Ide and Maxime Soulet. Runners up, Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox. And then for the winners, Davide Rigon and Andrea Montermini. For Monthermini, it's now 11 podiums in 12 races in 2013. And for the Lorber Course team, their third victory of the year. As ever, the entire pit lane congregating underneath the podium, where the serious business of the weekend complete. Time to celebrate with the champagne on the rostrum. And why not? Fantastic race, very tricky conditions, and some fine performances. Can't see just how hard Enzo Ide and Maxime Soulé were pushing in the Aston Martin, and the hope is that they will be back for the remainder of this season and certainly a full campaign next year. The same would go for the Lamborghini. Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox immediately established themselves onto the pace. And for the Lorber Course Ferrari, Andrea Monthermini, Davide Rigon, this weekend has not been without its bumps. What better way to bring it to a finish? Let's move on to the presentations for the GTS class, which as ever has been fantastically competitive this weekend. So into third place, Joel Comathius and Stefano Constantini. It's been a really strong performance from the pair of them this weekend. Certainly the best shown for the Ombre Ferrari all season. Second place, GTS class, Maxime Soulé and Enzo Ide. And then although they didn't win the race outright, they do win the GTS class, Peter Cox and Fabian Hamprecht for the Team Rhinos Leipert Motorsport Lamborghini team. German national anthem for the winning team in the class, the Leipert Motorsport squad, and on with the presentations of the trophy. So Constantini and Comathius for third place. Very large haul of trophies this weekend for Enzo Ide and Maxime Soulé. Outright podium and class podium today, class podium yesterday. GPR Aston Martin, always a very, very competitive car whenever it appears. And then winning the class, Fabian Hamprecht and Peter Cox. Perfectly judged race. Peter Cox managed the conditions. Fabian Hamprecht did exactly what he needed to do. And again, it's been a difficult weekend for the Leipert Motorsport squad. Their other car damaged in a qualifying crash yesterday, never even got to race, but the car that did make it to the grid has gone superbly well. So now that the business of the weekend is done, it's time for the final celebrations on the podium. We will see you in the first weekend of October in Monza. But until then, from myself, Ben Evans, thank you for your company.